Live. All right. Welcome everyone to the final day of QuaranCon. Thank y'all so much for being here. This is day 5 of 5. We have more awesome programming throughout the day, but this right here is a roundtable discussion of the future of SFF conventions. And to talk about that, we've got Esther MacCallum and LD Lewis, who are going to introduce themselves in just a moment. And also Taya is going to be facilitating for us. She's going to keep an eye on the chat and keep me on topic. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here, audience members, and also especially panelists, not panelists, roundtable discussers, fellow con leaders. I'm really excited to have this discussion because I think it's an important and timely one. And I can't wait to hear what everyone has to say about our topics. But first, introductions. We will go in alphabetical order and start with Esther.
Okay, is that going to be first name or surname?
Yeah,
going to be. So, hi everybody. My name's Esther. Pronouns she, her, and I'm currently the chair of the Glasgow 2024 WorldCon. So we're still in the bid stage. But we have filed our paperwork for the bid and there have been no other bids. So we will go to the vote unopposed. But there's still time. There's still time for us to do something so awful and terrible that we aren't voted for. Because you can vote for nothing. But yes, hopefully that won't happen. So hello.
I did not know that about WorldCon bids.
Yes.
I am mystified by those rules. Anyway, I am LD Lewis. I am the founder and chair and whatever else for FIYAHCON, which is a virtual convention that centers the experiences and contributions of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in speculative literature, which is a mouthful, but super important. The Glasgow bid, you all actually sponsored our second year.
We did, yes.
So we are big fans, and also
well, obviously vice versa as well.
We also our first year was Hugo nominated, ironically. So that's what I'm here to talk about.
Fair. All right, Taya, do you want to say hi?
Sure. I'm Taya, also known as TL Greylock. Been helping out at QuaranCon for a couple of years now and excited to take part in this.
Awesome. And I'm Virginia McClain, founder of QuaranCon. This is our 3rd year running. We are also a virtual con. We aspire to be as awesome as FIYAHCON in different ways, because obviously y'all have a niche that we should not be trying to represent, but y'all do an amazing job with so many things, and we look forward to that. And WorldCon has had some issues, but is awesome at times, and y'all seem to be committed to doing an awesome job with it. So I'm very excited for this conversation. I guess we can get started. And everyone in the audience, please post questions as you have them. Taya's going to keep an eye on the chat and keep us updated on what's going on over there. But we will do questions at the end or as we have time for them, or if they seem particularly pertinent to what we're already discussing. So, but there's a lag between us and y'all watching on YouTube. So the sooner you pop questions in, the more easily we'll be able to address them in a timely fashion. So. Okay, so from the notes that I sent out before, the pandemic has changed the way that many people think about accessibility. Everyone having to work from home, suddenly being shown very dramatically that working from home is manageable, where many people have been told for years that it's not a thing they can do when they've needed it for their own disability access. And which is a whole other, well, maybe not other, it's a big part of this ball of wax of this accessibility. But we've seen so many accommodations made for the pandemic, and hopefully it has opened people's eyes to a lot of accessibility issues in lots of ways. But since we're kind of trying to keep this a manageable conversation, talking about SFF conventions, how do you think this will affect SFF conventions going forward? And I'm just reading the questions because they're in my notes, but actually, Taya, you could read the questions if you want. because we're all gonna talk about these. I'm not like, yeah.
Esther, you want to go first, or?
Oh, as good as damn it. Yeah, I mean, I think the two of us have probably got slightly different perspectives on this, because obviously FIYAHCON kind of was and has been online, whereas we came from kind of the opposite direction and having always been offline, and then there was the pivot at Con Zealand. And we're also now seeing people kind of start to sort of rush back towards in person. And I've been thinking about this quite a lot, because I think I'm going to do a horrible fence sit, but I actually think there's room for both of them, because they're actually quite different. Because we're seeing both an expectation that we're going to be in person, and also that we're going to have some form of hybrid. And I think, hybrid is very, very difficult. But I've seen so many kind of amazing things happen online that I want more of that. And I think what you're saying, Virginia, about working from home is, yes, it's not just an access thing. It's something that's really opened things up. And I was in a meeting earlier, and we were talking about guest speakers, and suddenly you can get guest speakers if you've got the people throughout a 24-hour time zone talking about much more than just in the room. And that's really, really powerful. Like, that's a really, really big deal. But for me, I think it's the balance going back that's the key issue for me at the moment, because we've opened up so many things, but then how do we keep that accessibility, and how do we keep that balance going? Is it in person and virtual, or is it hybrid? Like, what's next? I think, yeah.
Yeah, we FIYAHCON sprouted from FIYAH. I'm one of the co-founders of FIYAH Literary Magazine for Black Speculative Fiction. Everything I do has an exceptionally long title. I apologize. But we've been around since 2016, also Hugo winners, so yay for that. And we're back on the ballot this year.
Okay.
But doing a virtual, doing a convention was one of like those pipe dream things. And then we finally got like an obscene amount of recognition, acknowledgement, cash infusions around the summer of 2020 Black Lives Matter movement thing that either is or is not any longer a thing. And so we were able to actually do the virtual thing because COVID had kind of made virtual things, I guess, more practical. It was something that people could actually begin to envision. So we paid attention to what to a lot of WorldCon's failings, which we were kind of keeping an eye on over the years, the recurring accessibility issues, tokenism and extreme like whiteness on panels, the 101 level discussions about anything that was ethnically othered, something like that. And so the convention was born out of that. And we did end up having like 24-hour programming, like around the clock thing. And that was inspired partially by Con Zealand Fringe, their work. So the thing I'm banging on about now is, now that we're going back to in-person things, I don't want to lose, I don't want people who were finally able to participate in things to no longer be able to participate in them, to have attending events be something that is only tied, fondly to the COVID years, something like that. And what I'm finding is a lot of organizations tend to be willing to sacrifice on the virtual front once they return back to in-person things. What I'd rather see is virtual considerations for virtual audiences being organically blended into the in-person activities. Panels that are hosted only online, I would like to see them streamed into the live spaces, and vice versa. And not only should both people who are attending both ways have access to the content, but there should be an interactive element, a community, an event feeling element, so that you're not just like shoving content down people's throats. You want people to still have something of a social experience, because what you're doing is, and it's an event, it's a convention. There should be interaction stuff there. That's half the fun.
Yeah.
But I am concerned that there's a lot of lack of imagination concerning how to do a hybrid thing. I think maybe like 3 or 4 people in all of SFFdom have an idea, but those 3 or 4 people are also super busy and can't do everything. So I'm hoping more organizers become more curious and want to experiment more with what hybrid conventions can be. I really do hope that we don't have to, do the one or the other thing.
Yeah, totally. One of the main pieces of feedback that we get back that makes us keep coming back, even though lockdowns are not really a thing right now, whether or not they should be, is that we get a lot of messages from folks who just can't normally attend conventions for a whole host of reasons, from disability to being immunocompromised, to the extent that year round they cannot go to a big room full of other people, whether there's COVID or not. To just like not being able to afford to travel to go to a convention and not having one that's local to them. So many different reasons. And we get a lot of really nice feedback from folks about how this still felt like being at a con, et cetera. And we love bringing that to folks. And so I hope that, that type of thing can continue, and that it would be great if in-person cons could adopt some hybridization to make that feeling accessible, like to let more people in on those events as they happen live still also. Because I also miss live cons, right? Like those are really fun. But yeah, the fact that some people who just can never go to them, like we've got a bunch of authors who are like, I've never been able to go be on a panel with other authors before, and we got to do that. And you're like, yeah, that's awesome. We want more of that. So I agree wholeheartedly. I think I think it's kind of nice that we're all on the middle of the road fence, because there are different benefits to each of those things, but the idea that both can go forward is really a nice one. I'm going to let Taya take over question asking, and I'm going to shift into just pure conversation.
Yeah, so sort of coming off of that, I mean, we've mentioned a little bit some of the challenges that in-person conventions face that virtual conventions don't. I don't know if there's any more specifics you want to expand upon, but also then the question of how do in-person conventions, like what are some actual ways that those challenges can be overcome, using maybe some learning from some of the virtual work that's been done?
That's a great question. Who wants to take it? I mean, I'm not an in-person con person, so I guess I don't know.
I can take some, I think. I think like there's kind of 2 or 3 things here. I think LD's completely right. Like from her first statement is WorldCon has made some errors. And also, there's the sort of adage in con running that goodwill is a currency all of its own. It's lost a lot of that by doing things that are difficult and problematic and then repeating those mistakes. And the 101, absolutely, like I think the current program team on FIYAHCON are absolutely fantastic, but again, that's now, and that's been born out of just why do these mistakes keep happening. And I do also think that we're volunteers and we change every year, that's not good enough, really, because hey, we all, or most people, attend WorldCon repeatedly, so what's the issue there? In terms of learning from stuff that's happened online for in person, it's not just the don't make a mistake, it's be adventurous, like move forward. Like if the mistake that you're making is a kind of issue that hasn't happened before, that's actually probably quite a good thing. Like if, for example, if your discords are really boring, Like, that's a much better learning than, oh, hey, you just produced a whole load of panels that alienate the people that you are, again, trying to attend, and you're making it look like it's tokenism, and you're having people on those panels who are disrespecting the people there, and that panel is people of color 101, like, come on now. But I think the stuff that we can learn is, I was really struck recently. I watched an absolutely fantastic discussion by Tanya DePass and B. Dave Waters, who randomly went and talked to this university online about, to a law school, about how they produced Into the Motherland. And they were asked in the background that question, the white person question, how can I be a good ally? And they just rolled their eyes and they were like, well, first of all, look, can we not keep having to do this? And Tanya DePass said something that just has really struck with me, which was, give us our own space to do our thing. Give us space and stop trying to walk over it. Stop trying to be in it. And I think that's actually really important for hybrid as well, and for bringing people in. It's like, as you said, there's like 4 people who are doing stuff. We can get more than that, and we can get those people to do things, but it's actually listening to them rather than being like, this is what I want. That's a different thing. What can you do is a really different question. And I think that element of listening rather than saying, this is what we've done before, or this is what we're going to do again, this is what we're going to try and fix, is actually there. Yeah, maybe we do need to be much more experimental with what we're doing. So yeah, the mistakes aren't the mistakes that are mistakes about people, they're mistakes about a tech process, or something that we can actually change. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good.
If I could actually maybe just sort of add to the question a little, is what you're saying about being more experimental. I'm curious if, we've all been going through this COVID world for a few years now, and outside of learning things we could potentially try, not just from other conventions, online conventions, but what else have we seen in this COVID world happening virtually that maybe can be inspiring and stuff that we wouldn't have thought of before?
I think it's a question of just how easy it is to kind of do these events. Like con running COVID has kind of democratized this whole field. Like, it's, if you have a target community and not even that large of a budget, like, you can, Discords are free, Slacks are free, social spaces are free to create. You just have to find, I think, dynamic and low grade learning curve ways to kind of implement them into the programming side of things. But I don't see a lot of excitement to do that. I think it's part of that that urgency to return to normal thing. I think the root of the unwillingness to change, I think it's a rigidity in structure that these older organizations are struggling with, and a rigidity of perspective. If you've always wanted to host, or I keep bagging on WorldCon, but I also chaired last year's Nebula conference. But there are institutional issues as to why things can't change. Tradition, has to be honored no matter how many people were excluded from it, in the beginning. If this is your, if WorldCon's coming to your city and it's the only chance you've ever had to work on a WorldCon, you're going to want to fit into that structure rather than try and do something different with it. And then the people who are kind of chairing, or department leads or whatever, I think a lot of people have, I don't want to say ego reasons for getting involved in con running, but I think that is a factor. It's that power thing. It's there's an amount of prestige that comes with running an event for one of these legacy organizations. And you're not going to want to disappoint whoever the core base of that is supposed to be. And so you're going to get further with them by honoring traditions than by trying to upend anything. So I think that if, as con runners, we end up questioning from the beginning who our audience is, and we're honest about that.
Yeah.
You know, if you only want to cater to the old guard, just say that. You know, people won't, you know, have to pay $200, $300 plus travel and lodging to attend the thing that you didn't want them at in the first place.
And I think,
go ahead.
Sorry, go on. Yeah. Okay.
No, you're fine.
Yeah. I think there's something else attached to that as well, which you're saying about kind of this sort of prestige thing, is that there's this really unpleasant sort of subtext that you start off as a kind of fresh-faced young convention attendee. You're probably the mythical age of 18, because, you know, apparently that's when people start getting into fandom, which actually doesn't really tie anyway. So you walk in, you're 18 and you volunteer and you become a runner, and you're a runner, and then the next year somebody asks you to do something a bit more important, and then it becomes more important, and then finally you reach the lofty arcs of the sort of top end management, and yes, there's the sort of expectation there. And actually that's something that there's so many problematic things with that. So many assumptions of welcoming, so many financial assumptions, so many kind of assumptions that you are a sociable person, you know, and so on and so forth. And one of the things that we've tried to do right from the start is to say, well, look, you've got management experience, great. Like, I'm not really that interested in how many WorldCons you've been to before. I'm interested in whether or not you can run my Discord and actually, but that does feel like a bit of a break. And the thing that we've noticed is, again, people are wary, and they are rightly wary. So, you know, I'll ask people and they'll be like, well, no, you know. And I think, and also that's fair, you know, like giving people the opportunity to just turn you down is actually a big thing as well. Like I'm very and I think LD, you know, I know this is an issue with FIYAHCON as well, that burnout is a thing, and people will just work until they explode. And I'm like, you know, no, please don't do that. And like, I don't want people in any level of the organization who are working so much. And again, because that also comes with a sense of entitlement. It's like, I work this hard and therefore and it's like, you shouldn't be doing that in the first place. Recognition doesn't come from that, you know, and yeah, this kind of idea of merit and valor and all of these things, it's a really difficult, and it is really ingrained. And, you know, even me saying, oh, I don't want people to do that, I still know it's happening. So yeah. Yeah.
I was just going to add also, I think sort of this idea of like catering to the elite and the prestige and stuff, I think applies to the socialization aspect of in-person cons as well. Like, we all know what BarCon is, and, you know, you have this image of like people holding court and, you know, so-and-so who's important. And I think that there's a disconnect there as well in terms of welcoming everybody, and obviously, you know, bars themselves being a potentially problematic space to be in, and this idea that like we all have to drink to socialize, and like all of that becomes like, we all want to go back to more socialization, but at the same time that there's inherent issues just being around other people. I'm going to take a look quickly. There's a couple of things coming up in the chat. So Tyrene was mentioning that it could be fun to do creative brainstorming sessions as part of a con. So like collaborative writing workshops or open writing sessions. And whether there are things, and Andrew's mentioning things that are con exclusive opportunities, like pitch critiques or virtual BarCons, agent meets and stuff like that. Whether in a virtual or hybrid or in-person setting. If anyone wants to kind of speak to any of that.
Yeah, we did those for FIYAHCON. We had our office hour sessions, we had pros who volunteered, to do a certain number of like 15-minute slots, which they could offer like publishing Q&As, pitch critiques, or something else. There was a third thing. And those ended up, we had people attend FIYAHCON as their first like kind of publishing event, got an office hour session, and then ended up signing with the editor or somebody that they interviewed with there, which was like awesome. So I think I don't know too much about in-person publishing things to begin with. Like my whole thing is I do things out of spite. So I saw existing cons kind of messing up all over the place, and I was like, we don't have to live this way, and then just like did a FIYAHCON thing. So the first one I actually attended was last year's WorldCon, and it was because we were like Hugo nominated. And I was like, well, somebody's got to collect the trophy. And that was not a great experience as like a first-time attendee, or a first-time attendee of color specifically. So I'm kind of taking the feedback that I've seen online about the event, and then also my experience with this one thing to kind of come up with what they should look like. So I don't know if the critique things are something that are typically offered in person, or if there is more programming or more kind of structuring that's geared toward first-time attendees, like setting up kind of like not mentors, but like, I don't know, someone who's been there before will, be your
shadow someone.
Yeah, your point of contact or whatever, for how to navigate the con or whatever. I would love, I hope that is a thing. That seems like something that you would want to put into a thing that is trying to grow, if that's what you're claiming it's doing. But I don't know. I hope to actually attend Glasgow, and I hope you're doing something like that.
Yeah, well, actually, I kind of went off and took some notes, but because I've left my pen downstairs and my notebook is over there. And the answer to that is yes and no. There are kind of orientation sessions, there are kind of meet people sessions, but they are a bit more formalized than that. I actually think this is something that works a lot better online. And one of the reasons I think it's better online is nuance, actually, that you're in a position where you can look much more intently at somebody's work rather than what that person is doing in front of you. Because if a very nervous person comes up and is sort of like, here's my work, oh help, oh my goodness, you're a great author, I'm really pleased to, that's actually a big distraction. Whereas when you're doing it online, I'm a professor of game studies, and I switched all of my supervisions this year to online rather than in person. And I've had, obviously, they don't have any excuse because they're in their bedrooms already. But the thing that I've actually found is that the ability to critique safely is much more effective online, because you are probably going through something and you probably are talking, but then there's a little bit of typing, and that enables an environment that doesn't feel as harsh, and it takes away some of the sort of, some of the kind of shyness or some of the awkwardness of being there in person. But I'm also not saying, let's not do it. One of the things that I think WorldCon has done badly in the past is the naming of these sessions. So instead of calling it first time WorldCon orientation, it's been called a docent tour. When I started, I didn't know what that was.
Right.
The Nebbies do the same thing. It's there's like mentorship, and then there's office hours, and neither of them are what you think they are.
Yeah, and it's difficult. It's, again, WorldCon is worse because it's cafe clatches, which is like, unless you read the Chalet School books that were written in the 1930s, you're not going to know what that is. And coffee with a publisher, coffee with an author, like it's that. So call it that. That's much clearer. But yeah, I think you're right, and I think for a lot of people, this is not just a convention that you're going to attend panels. This is your opportunity to go and promote your book or novella or set of poems or performance or whatever it is, and giving people the space to do that comfortably is a really, it's really important. As you say, like the financial barrier is massive. And yeah, like it's really essential. It's a really essential part that I think is sometimes it's kind of forgotten in the let's provide entertainment rather than, actually a lot of people are not here for that. Right. So, yeah.
So one suggestion or something that came up in the chat is Diana Gunn is mentioning she has a Discord for participants, but when activity level tends to vary a lot, how do you sort of, from one event to the next? The question is, how do you balance that out and make it an appealing side activity to a virtual event or a hybrid event or something like that? I don't know if anybody wants to maybe expound on that a little bit.
I'm not sure the question. So the Discord doesn't have a lot of activity?
Yeah, like just in terms of increasing activity in a virtual setting or sort of leveling the playing field, and how do you make some of those, like there's only so much excitement about chatting in a Discord, right? If you're not face-to-face and stuff like that. So how do we is there a way to kind of balance that out a little bit? Maybe.
What are we balancing it out with?
Is she running like its events and it's like a busy Discord during event time and then between is when it lags? Is that the question?
I think that, and also from one event to the next, like if they're not getting equal play, which is true in person too, right? Like some events are going to be really popular and others aren't. Okay. But if there's a way to use something like Discord to, I don't know, achieve a more equilibrium.
No, I think that's just the virtual version of a session being lightly attended in person. Fights of Foundry was this past weekend, and they use Discord, but they use it around the clock. Like they have, they use it around like year round. And so they kind of build in and sort of foster community in that respect. And then when the annual event rolls around, like everybody is there for that. And so what they did was they have a number of just like general like discussion channels or whatever, but for these sessions specifically, if you're watching a panel or whatever, the panel will have a corresponding channel within the Discord for questions and like communications or whatever to continue during the session. And then if the discussion's really good or whatever, all of the panelists will go into that channel after, the panel time is ended and continue discourse from there. And they use like 4 or 5 channels, I believe, and just like kind of stagger it depending on, what programming item was next. But that would be a way to, like, if you're concerned about certain channels not seeing a whole lot of activity, or certain panels or whatever, if you're in the Discord, you're going to get those notifications that conversations are happening in certain spaces. So that could be a use for like, oh, well, people are actually attending this and talking about this. Let me pop in and see what this is about. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much if it's the same as like an in-person panel. Maybe not as many people as you thought are into the topic, and that's fine. But there are other like social things that you can put into like a Discord or a Slack space.
Sure.
I think it's an energy. Oh, go on. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to move on. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's an energy thing as well. Like it's okay to have downtime. Like it,
yeah.
Just because not everybody is making noise all of the time doesn't actually mean things aren't happening.
Right.
And that's fine. And I think particularly if you're running an event, the perception that most people have is that the event happens over a certain time and there'll be activity then. And it's great if it continues, but it's not going to be that kind of fever pitch that it probably is. And I think, I think the kind of comparison with a low attendance panel is a good one, because actually you can go to a panel that's got, 20 people in it, as opposed to the one that's got everybody going and watching some big reading. And it will be just as, you will feel just as good having been in it, but a completely different energy, and it's okay. And I think, again, kind of going back to access, allowing people to be able to do that is actually quite important, that you don't want to be shoving them at the high octane things all of the time. Sometimes it's just nice to be in the quiet room or reading or, whatever you're doing, like it's okay.
So Pam asked the question of what should be done in advance of a con to make it a welcoming space for everyone, and what are the red flags that this might not be the case?
That's a great question.
It's a huge question.
Yeah.
I think it starts out with your intent and how well you honor your mission. So when we started FIYAHCON, we were like, okay, so we are doing this because this group of people is underutilized or underappreciated or not paid enough attention to when we talk about, the grand scheme of SFF. And so every decision that comes after that is in service of that mission. So if we say we're centering BIPOC or whatever, that's making sure that they have outsized representation on all of our programming. It wasn't like exclusively BIPOC, but it was just like, we're going to, instead of having, one Black or brown face on a panel, we're going to set our threshold at all of them. And then depending on how many of them are interested in it or whatever, we'll move from there and, sub in anybody else. Our route was also, like I said, we were paying attention to where WorldCon was messing up. No 101 panels. We were tired of having, the 3 Black people in attendance at every convention have to explain to everyone what Afrofuturism is. So we're not going to do that anymore. WorldCon was not doing well with accessibility. So we made sure that that captioning or interpretation, the use of our platforms, whatever, everything was as accessible as we could make it from jump. So we didn't have to kind of shoehorn it into the budget later on, just in case somebody needed it. So all of those things have to, for our purposes, all of that stuff was organic and essential to our mission. So that's where you start. If your focus of the thing is just, I want all of the best and most high profile and successful people at this thing, you're going to attract a different audience. If your goal is to, I want to have these very specific conversations, that's also going to attract a different audience. If it's, I'm going to serve this segment of the community, that's the audience that you're catering to. So it's all about intent and mission from there, and then just sticking with it and not just being like, oh, well, this isn't working out, let's pivot. Like, I don't know. You're married. I'm married to FIYAHCON. I'm married to what it is, what it will be. We have an award thing that we do every year now. And so that's my life. But it's all of it is in service of that initial mission.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think also, yeah, don't just say you're going to do it. Do it. Don't just say you're going to do it. Like, and one of the things that we've tried to do right from the beginning, I mean, I've been working on 2024 since 2015, which is when we first kind of announced it. But one of the first things that I did when we started to put the team together, so it started to be an organization that was starting to become out-facing, was think about that vision. Like, not just what the WorldCon I want is. That's, in some ways, that's completely irrelevant. What is the WorldCon that we are going to create, and how are we going to do that? Not just, oh, that would be nice. What does this mean financially? Yeah, what does this mean about interpretation services, about access services? What does this mean about our promotions? Because we've got a very active promotions department, but who are we putting in that? Who's in our monthly panels? Who are we showcasing? Who is doing the talking? Like, when people look at Glasgow 2024, not just what do they see, but what happens, what do they get? Because I think, there's this kind of performative inclusivity, which that's not useful. And one of the things that I've been doing recently, and in fact, this was Marguerite Kenner was the first person to recommend this, and then a couple of my other advisors said the same, is being transparent about the decisions that we're making. So I've written a post about how we've chosen our guests of honor, who I'm in the process of asking, how do we do that? How do you choose guests of honor that represent your vision? And LD, I think you're right. Yeah, if you choose one set, there's a knock-on effect of that. What does that mean? What does that mean for everybody else? And we're already talking about access. We're already talking about what it's going to look like, but we're also trying to show by doing as well. who have we interviewed so far? Like, what groups are we talking to in Scotland already, so that we can, you know, that we don't just parachute in and then piss off again.
Right.
Like, what legacies are we setting up and leaving? And so a good example of this is, as I said, I'm an academic. That means that there's a University of Glasgow. Reach out to them. Fortunately, already knew some people, and we've actually put together a bid for underrepresented Scottish voices, which is a series of panels that we're going to do before the convention, before 2024, that we can then continue on afterwards. So that's got, in some ways, we could have done that anyway, and we have been granted the funding for that. So that's amazing, and that goes through the university. That's not, you know, so it's WorldCon adjacent, but it becomes okay, yeah, we're actually doing what we said we were going to do. We're not just saying, oh, well, we're going to invite some people, you know, 24 hours before the convention starts, because isn't that nice? We want to work with the people who have not been able to attend, you know. Yeah, what does that mean? What does that mean in terms of money? What does that mean in terms of like the down-to-earth daily working of the convention, rather than vision is great, and obviously this comes from vision, but you actually have to implement it, you know. And sorry, I got a little bit of a rant, because this also means that there are things that you're not going to be able to do. So that means that you have to be clear about what those are going to be as well. Like, where are you going to have to say language? Sign language is one of them, and in fact, we've just been speaking to one of my members of staff who's recommended that we use universal sign, because British Sign Language, European Sign Languages, American Sign Languages, very different from each other. In fact, people who are hard of hearing don't like using the word language either. So what does that mean? You know, what does that mean for our use of captioning? What does that mean for the people who we do have? Does it mean multiple people are signing? Because that's going to cause proprioceptive problems with people. So again, it's that thinking through these now, right? Again, rather than like, oh, it'll be really nice if we do that. But also being able to say, look, we're not going to do this because we're going to do that, is actually quite important as well. Like, managing those expectations really clearly, to make sure that we are clear to people why we've taken the decisions that we have, and why they are really integral to the we're trying and this is why, you know. So yeah, but yeah.
I get very, very ranty about cons, so I get it.
Yeah. Virginia, can I ask what you've done specifically in the virtual space is to sort of address the issue of welcoming and making sure that spaces feel open to people?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's we try really hard to be as welcoming and inclusive as possible, and build on what we learn every year. The struggle that we run into a lot is, so we do all of our panels by application, and so we sort of tweet out our application early on and say, hey folks, you know, apply. We've got, like, previously we had people choose, like, say that they wanted to be like, oh, I'd like to do this panel with these people. But this year we started something new. We decided what the panels would be in advance, and we just tweeted that out and said, hey, which of these panels would you like to be on? But it's still application based. So with a few exceptions, for example, this roundtable where we invited folks, but mostly it's like, here we send the application out into the Twitter sphere, and then we have our applicants, and then Pam tries to work her magic with paneling. And we want, like, ideally, we want every single panel to be as representative as possible. We want our whole community to have great slices of representation of the SFF community, but we only have the people who apply to deal with. And we go back and forth about whether or not it's okay to specifically invite people, because we don't have enough representation. And I feel like we should, but it makes things awkward sometimes to do that, because we don't want people to feel like they're being invited because they represent a marginalization, rather than because they're awesome and also represent a marginalization, right? We want people to feel like they're being invited because they're awesome, and they are. Like that's our reason behind anything. But then the way you do that, the way, like, how do you make it clear that, like, hey, we're inviting you because you're awesome, but also because we don't have enough representation, and we were hoping that you could step in that and be honest about it. And it's complicated and it's hard, and it's a thing we deal with every year. And so then I feel like part of, like, the best thing we can do is to have as many panels, have as much representation as possible on each one, and have people see that. And then hopefully that encourages people from all marginalized groups to apply year after year. And then we get a broader representation in our applicants. But I also want to know, like, I also hope that whatever we do, we can make it, like, more people feel safe and welcome. Like, oh, look, I saw lots of people who share my marginalization in QuaranCon last year, so clearly I'll be welcome there, and therefore I will apply, right? And, like, that's what we want. But it's a sticking point, right? Because if you start off with our very first run was just like, yeah, more white dudes than I would have liked. I'll just put it that way, right? And so then it's like, well, crap, now, like, how do we make it really obvious that this is not what we were headed for, right? And then there's that struggle. And so, yeah, I feel like I feel like every year we debate whether or not we're going to happen. So we're like a 100% free convention. And so it's like, we don't have funds that would be perhaps really useful for making sure that we get seen in places where we can be like, hey, look, we want you, come apply, right? And instead it's just sort of like the people who already are following us on Twitter retweet us, and we wind up in similar audiences to where we've been. But what's awesome is, like, we've seen a huge increase in some marginalized groups, right? Like, I have become more vocal on, like, my own marginalizations lately. And so we've had a big influx of queer and neurodiverse folks because I'm in those Twitter spheres already, right? And so that's awesome. Like, I think we've had neurodivergent people on, like, every single panel almost, like, awesome. And queer rep also on almost every single panel, like, pretty solid that way. But I'm sad every year when I look at our panelists and I'm like, why don't we have more BIPOC? Like, I want more Black, Indigenous people of color. And part of me, like, I actually did consider approaching you, LD, earlier beyond this panel to be like, hey, can you retweet our application so that we get more people?
What FIYAHCON does, we have an application approach too, but that's only like half of it. We do, like, kind of a hybrid thing.
Yeah.
We have kind of like a list of topics we want to hear specific people speak to, and, like, we'll maybe get one or two of those on the panel, and then to fill out the rest of it, we will open up submissions to people who are it's just like a general kind of, are you interested in being on programming panel or whatever, and you provide us with some information, and based on that, we'll see if you fit, the rest of the holes in this thing.
Yeah.
So fun fact, the FIYAHCON website, you can just, like, we left up all of our panelists from last year.
Just going through.
Yeah, seriously, like, that's literally why we did it. So every year I do a retrospective that, like, breaks down costs, different considerations, struggles, triumphs for the season, whatever. And that's done so that, like, other cons that are coming up or whatever, like, have kind of a point of reference for what they can expect to spend on certain things.
Yeah.
And so we leave all of that information up on the website as well. Like, if you're struggling to find Black or brown faces, here's literally 200 of them. Enjoy. So I think using a hybrid approach, having in mind the Black, Indigenous people of color, people that you would want to see on there, reaching out to them directly, and then using the application situation to kind of fill in the rest of it, I think that'll help, because there are kind of so many events, like big and small and whatnot. It's kind of hard to keep track of them. A lot of people may not even just be aware that they exist.
Yeah,
that QuaranCon happened. So
we're tiny.
reaching out directly, I think will go a long way toward help trying to fix that, at least.
Yeah. And that's, I probably, it would help. We like, one of our other things is to try to, we want to feel like we're open to writers at every point in their career. And so like we wind up with noobs as well as more experienced writers in as well. And we love that about ourselves. But I think we might need to think more about having at least a handful of panels. Like last year, I actually like invited folks to a world building panel, like Evan Winter and K.S. Vioso. And actually, did you wind up on that one, or Andrea Stewart? Like a few people just like make this super awesome world building panel. And I, part of me wants to do like, you know, a half dozen panels that way. And then, you know, and then the rest going on from there. But it's like, then that feels also like a little bit elitist, like, oh, these people have already been really successful. We want people at all levels and all backgrounds, right? Like we to feel comfortable at the convention. And but anyway,
also on the FIYAHCON website,
yes,
is
please.
Our archive of panels from last year.
Yeah.
The bulk of the people we invited had never been invited to speak before, but the programming was amazing. So we also have a lot of new people and like people who had never attended things. So if you go through the panels, any of the programming, you can see what some of these people are talking about and see if you want to invite them to opine on something for QuaranCon. Awesome. But all of it's there. I keep saying
it's awesome.
I was like, we gave you the tools. So just yeah, it's there. The truth is out there. The help is out. Just have to, you know, it'll take a few hours to watch stuff, but
sure.
Yeah.
No, but thank you for that. Thank you for doing that, period, just as a general service, but also thank you for mentioning it. And I will like go dive through that. Yeah, I mean, and so yeah, I don't know. I think that's my answer to that question, Taya. I think to the degree that I can answer it is we do that and we try to build on that every year. And I feel like, you know, we're getting better year by year, but I would love to make sort of a more massive step forward in terms of Black, Indigenous people of color representation. Like, I feel like we want it'd just be sweet to have more. There's so many amazing authors too. Like, I mean, yeah. Sorry, I would kill to have Rebecca Roanhorse on a panel. I'm just going to throw that out there. I wouldn't actually kill. That would be bad. But I chickened out of inviting her actually to the All-Star panel last year. I was like afraid of emailing her agent. Anyway, that's a me problem. Moving on.
So we're getting a little close to the end of our time. I want to take the last question is a very big one, very broad, but like if you just think ahead into the future, 5, 10, 15 years, what do you think the future of conventions looks like out there? And yeah, that's a big question, but.
Assuming the world still exists.
Yeah.
Optimistically, I hope hybrid things take off. That I think that's going to depend entirely on the people who are running them. But worst case scenario, I think a lot of places will go back to basically online, maybe with some online features. I'm live with some online features. And then I think virtual conventions will continue to just be, you know, virtual things. And it'll be kind of a, you know, choose your own adventure situation, you know, what people want to attend, what they're able to attend. Cost-wise, virtual conventions are always going to kind of be preferable. But I mean, FIYAHCON, we charged like $40 a ticket and had like over 1,000 people attend both years. You know, and that helped us fund other things as well. Some places, you know, QuaranCon's free, Flights of Found You is free. Yeah, WorldCon last year did not have 1,000 people attend, so.
Yep, no, I wasn't there. I couldn't attend. It was over the student assessment, so teaching people. So yes, but it was, which was both a shame and not a shame. I don't think I was ready to travel that then. Yeah, particularly from the UK or Plague Island, as we like to call it. But yeah, I think I don't want to see things look the same. And when I say look, I kind of mean both in terms of the people that I'm looking at and the things that I'm going to see. I just think that, I mean, Glasgow is working very hard to change what it can, whilst also retaining quite a strict framework. And I think FIYAHCON certainly is as well, and some of the ones that are kind of coming forward. I also think that WorldCon is often problematized by itself, you know, be that whatever mistake we make, and there will be something, because there always is. It's the way that you deal with that mistake that's the important thing.
Right.
But also that, you know, yeah, like, I mean, I don't want to walk into a room and see everybody look like me. Like, what's interesting about that? I know what I think. I don't want to have to go and listen to it 6 times, you know, coming out of 6 identical mouths. And I think that's what I really want to see. And I think if that, you know, there's, yeah, definitely having really enjoyed a lot of online stuff and finding it, you know, from a neurodiverse perspective, so much more easy. So it's so much more easy not having to look in your eyes. You're all lovely, but just simple things like that. Just make things easier for people. And I think that's the other thing, is just, yeah, just getting, in 15 years time, there will be different mistakes. People will still be frustrated and angry about those mistakes, but I don't want to see the same ones again happening still. And yeah, I don't want to be looking at lots of me's in the room.
I mean, I echo all of that. Like, I hope that conventions, be they virtual or in person, are just a much better representative slice of humanity. Like, I was just looking up demographics before this, and like the world population on average does not look like me. And therefore, I think that the average panel at a convention should not look like me by the majority, right? Like, that just, I feel like we should have a more representative body in all of these big media events that we've got going on.
And I think, oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, like, we have, like, there's so many talented SFF authors from every single background. And it's just weird that, especially at in-person cons, we do not see that being represented on panels. Like, and I mean, I get why it happens. It's a legacy that's a whole problem, and it's compounded by systemic and institutionalized racism and all kinds, like, you know, like the patriarchy and colonialism are everywhere, and constant, like, they're responsible for that as well. But like, it's so funny that in a community that's supposed to be super imaginative, we haven't imagined our way out of this yet, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think kind of one of the things that I sort of wanted to talk about earlier about panels when you were talking, actually, Virginia, is I think actually in some cases there is absolutely a place for a panel that's all of one type of person.
Oh, sure.
And actually, again, that there are also spaces for people. Like, one of the things that we're looking at with Glasgow is we've already allocated 2 different suites so that people can go off and have, it's not a quiet room, that there's going to be a space for LGBTQI people and a space for underrepresented voices. And we're trying to think about where we put them as well, because the suites aren't together. So you know, if you don't have to just be a member of one, and there are problematic people from all of those communities and so on and so forth, but giving people, again, a space to be where they don't have to be performing for other people is actually really important as well. Like, yeah, where you can go and talk about your SFF, blah, blah. You can go and talk about your thing with your people, and then you can then kind of move into the wider community as well. Like, I think that's part of including people, you know, like, yeah.
It'd be nice to have a room for indie people to, like, not mask. Also, sorry, I was thinking about that, especially based on some conversations that have happened in our convention and on our Discord and stuff, is like, you know, but that's a separate, I mean, like, the spaces you already discussed are very important. I'm not trying to, I just was thinking, my brain was like adding that. Hi, ADHD
more
coming
space,
forward.
more room. Yeah. No, I agree. I do agree. Yeah, my non-masking place looks like my hotel room or my bedroom, unfortunately.
True.
So.
Yeah, right. That's
which makes virtual great.
Virtual is nice for that.
Yeah.
Is that do we want to? Are there any other questions in chat that we should address? Do we have an event right on our tail?
No, we do have half an hour before the next one. There was just some commentary about, how you, talking about scheduling Discord chats during certain times. I mentioned live listens, like I listen to a podcast that will do live sessions in their Discord community where everybody listens to it together and then can chat about it. And also the question of getting more diverse applications and stuff like that. So just people sort of chiming in on everything that was talked about.
Cool. Does anyone want to add closing thoughts? Because I think I would love to hear from both of you more than I would want to hear myself talk.
Or at least plug your upcoming con.
There you go. Also that.
FIYAHCON is not happening this year.
Sadness.
Yeah, we did 2 years and it was staffed. It was my first time running a con. It was staffed almost entirely by writers who kind of put their projects, their personal projects and career milestones kind of on hold in service of the community or whatever this was. And then last year, I don't know if everybody just needed like a really long nap, but we had some issues with like harassment of the staff and stuff.
Oh, no.
It was a lot of unpleasantness. So it was like, well, we can, we started this thing so that we could do whatever we want. We can also just pause it.
Right.
Everybody, we don't want to burn anybody out. We don't want to, deprive anyone of their energy to pursue their personal things. So my entire staff has been killing it. I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to write more. Nope, have not written anything. But the rest of my staff is doing marvelously with the downtime. So we might be back next year or like the year after, something like that. We're not gone. Our awards are still continuing.
Nice.
The Ignite Awards will be in September. Shortlist unveiling will be April 18th, primarily on Twitter. But yeah, so no cons. I mean, I'll be at ShyCon in also in September to take notes and probably make snarky comments. Something to do. But
will you be live tweeting it? Can we follow?
Oh gosh, it depends on how much ridiculousness there is. So we'll see. Last year was really great because there were so many like Black and brown people. It was like their first time attending a WorldCon, and we all found it to be slightly hostile of an environment. But we had like kind of a hangout spot behind the hotel restaurant where we would like just gather after everything was over during the day and just kind of talk it out because it was very interesting. Hoping not to have the same issue this year with ShyCon, but we'll see. And if it happens, you'll hear about it. Also, if it doesn't happen, you'll
That's
hear
good,
about it. I like to, if people are consciously working to improve and not just being like, oh, we're just volunteers, what are you going to do? I like to recognize those efforts as well. But that's my next con thing that's happening. It's not mine, but it is a con thing.
That's cool. Well, and the award ceremony, like the awards for the Ignite Awards, those are amazing. So everybody watch those.
It's fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Esther? You want to plug anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm also going to be at ShyCon. So I'm now like thinking, oh God, my facial recognition is so bad. I'm committing your face or trying really hard to committing your face to memory, LD. It will go. I've really got Oh dear. Yeah, I will also be at SFF. We're all going to be, a lot of my team are going to be at EasterCon this coming weekend, which is the UK National Convention. And we're going to be having a party, and we're going to be having a get together and a come and ask me questions. You might even be able to get a ribbon as being modelled in LT's got one just behind her.
I do. Oh my God, I forgot that was there.
Yeah, it's like it's bookcase sneakery. But yeah, and then obviously our vote happens at SFF. And I've written a long post, not very interesting post about that on our website. So yeah, that's kind of our upcoming stuff. But the sort of interesting thing for us is that we pivot from being a bid to, fingers crossed unless something happens, to being a convention, and that has its own challenges. You know, the registration background stuff, registration system switches over, names. You know, we need to make sure we've got our names and our localization sorted out, and then kind of onwards to the future. And yeah, we will be revealing our name if we win. We'll be revealing. So I'm looking over at something. Definitely not lying on my bed that we will be showing people. Also, my cat's also over there. I'm not going to be revealing him.
I've been looking over here because my cat's over there too, so I'm just like,
he likes to sit directly in front and kind of do things like chase his own tail and be ridiculously endearing, so I'm constantly kind of, I
have two, so one will always be asleep and then the other one will just come and sit on her head until she gets up and leaves, and then so
there's always a show.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's always a distraction. So,
but yeah,
awesome. So to everyone who wants to talk to these two lovely people, please go to ChiCon. And Tay, are you going? I don't think I'll make it either, but yeah, QuaranCon. This is our last day this year. We don't know if we're going again next year or not. Burnout is a real thing. And especially with a completely free convention, compounds the issue, because we ask a lot of our volunteers for absolutely zero compensation, myself and Pam included. And in fact, Pam and I pay a bunch of money to run our Zoom and our website and stuff. But yeah, so we'll see if we do this again. We love it so much, but it is a lot of work. Take some time to recover and think about it. Think about what we've done, and ways we can improve. I mean, that's the thing, that part of what makes me come back is like, oh, but if we do this and this and this, we could be so much better next year. And especially after this conversation, I feel armed with new ideas and a list of 200 panelists that I can approach. And I'm like, well, is it worth it? We should probably do it again so that we can get it more right. That would be better, you know?
I do the same thing. My team is just like, yes, we know it's a good idea. You don't have to do every good idea. So
that's a fair point. But thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate the time, especially as we are a free convention and we don't compensate our panelists or anything. So you have donated your time to us and we appreciate that greatly.
Absolutely.
And I loved this conversation. Thank you so much. And I am at the very least, I'm super hopeful for WorldCon 2024. If it goes to Glasgow, it sounds like y'all are making some really big improvements. Yeah. So
I'm rooting for you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. We are trying really hard. And as I say, there's a lot of weight on it, because there's a lot of kind of, I mean, somebody mailed me the other day with something that said, we have to be better than that. And I do feel actually the kind of pressure of that sometimes is very difficult on my team. But at the same time, yeah, there are things that we can do that we know will make things a bit better, even if it's just a bit. So yeah. Yeah, and I will be seeking you out, LD. People keep sending me and saying, have you seen what she said on Twitter? You need to go and have a look at this. There's a thing about guests of honor. You've got to go and read it. You've got to go.
God.
Have you seen what the advice is for this? So
that is horrifying.
No. All So, but yes, cool. I will try and find you. if a small pink whirlwind comes running towards you, then
all right.
just run back at the restaurant as fast as you can.
All right, noted.
All right.
Yeah, thank you for having us as well. So thank you for having me.
Very welcome. So delighted to have you both. And thank you so much, Taya, for fielding all those questions for us and keeping us in line. especially me. All right, thanks everybody. Our next event starts at it's Writing Fight Scenes. It starts at 7 p.m. UK time, which is 1 p.m. Central, and that's going to be awesome, so don't miss it. Also, I'm supposed to plug our book sale. I got to do all the things. So there's a 99-cent and free book sale. There's over 60 titles in it. It's a great way to support many of our authors, panelists, etc. So please check that out. You can find that along with all of our other stuff at QuaranCon2022.com. Yes, we're still stuck with our original website handle. And /book sale for the book sale. Oh, no, sorry, /2022 book sale. My apologies. So everyone, please check that out. Follow all of these folks on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Do all the great things like this video. And we will see you at the next event. Thanks so much.